as a woodpecker.
Mr. Garner, you mind saying a prayer?
Yes. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for all the people here. Thank you for the light you shine into our lives and the path that it outlines for us so that we may walk toward the place you would have us. May we always have confidence in what you tell us to do. And may we constantly remember that you are greater than any circumstance and any difficulty in our life, and that your plans are always good. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Welcome everybody to another Christian Artists Anonymous. Today is April the 16th, one day after taxes, as I'm sure you all know. And today we will have the pleasure of diving in to what it means to be a Christian who makes art. Mr. Hankins.
Well, I think before we get into our discussion, let's see, do I want to do this?
Sure.
Hey Bernard, how's it going?
It's going very well.
I didn't do the homework, I'm sorry.
What was the homework? Read?
Probably.
You'll be alright. Well, tonight we're going to talk about play and pleasure.
Dun, dun, dun.
I'm trying to think if I want to do this first thing first.
Yeah, but the first thing, you would do it first.
I don't know. Maybe I'll do it next week. We have the green bear.
There he is. We missed him.
I found him. So, yeah, this is one of my favorite topics because people don't like play and they don't like pleasure because they're afraid of what it means. So I'm going to start off with the short teaching, and then it's just going to evolve into discussion from there. So I remember when I was in church, somebody presented a message about God being blessed, and they mentioned that the word blessed actually meant to be happy. I had never heard that before, because most people don't think about God's demeanor as being happy, smiling, because we're used to him being judge, ruler, king, authoritative, will strike you down. So that changed my perspective, and ever since I've been learning more and more and more. One thing I always tell people is, so you have to, I think we got into this a little bit in the other class a couple weeks ago, and I always like to present it as, first of all, why do you think that God would not be happy? What is the opposition to having God being happy? And most people cannot really pinpoint a true reason or biblical reason other than we've just never been taught that God is happy. We've just been taught, as I said, that he's king, just. And I think also because when you see God as playful, smiling, then we get afraid. It's if God is, playful, then things are going to get out of control. Mm-hmm. He might accidentally kick the planet Earth, if he's having too much fun. I think that's the problem people have. They think if God is not serious, then one, you're not respecting him. Two, things are going to get out of control. Mm-hmm. But then I always bring it to this, which I think can help in a lot of areas and not just this topic. So if we're saying that we as human beings desire to be happy, then how can we then keep that off limits from God's desire? We're basically saying we have access to something that God doesn't have access to. We can be happy, but God obviously can't be happy. Mm-hmm. So we're able to be something that he's not. But then you take it even a step further, the fact that we do desire to be happy, and it says we're made in God's image, that must say something about God if we're constantly seeking this happiness. So let's take the word please, and I like to look at it from a couple different definitions. So the word please, where we also get the word pleasure, can mean, I think, just simple contentment, but then it can also mean smiling happy please. Because if you think about, say there was an evil king and somebody said, don't get on his bad side, we want to keep him happy, we want to keep him pleased. You're not saying you want to make him laugh, you're not saying you want to make him roll on the floor, but you're just saying you don't want to mess up the kind of even keeled nature that he's in. Mm-hmm. But then you take the other word please, and that's more about relationship. If you're married to a wife, you don't want to just not rock the boat. Like, you actually want to do things that make her happy. Things that make her glad that she is with you in the relationship. You're not just trying to maintain this minimum requirement. Like, you're actually going above and beyond to do something of worth, of value. So you can be in a relationship where you're married to somebody and you're like, yes, I come home, I say hello, I acknowledge your existence, I'm married to you, I'm your husband. Or you can plan romantic dinners and do exciting things and surprise your wife. But in the end, I guess the point I really want to make is that our constant desire as human beings is always to seek pleasure or happiness. Even if it's just in the minimum sense of, I want to make that person happy, as in I don't want to rock the boat. Like, that's the end result. There's no escaping the desire to be happy or make someone else happy. Especially like if you get into the area of giving. You know, people talk about giving as if it's completely selfless. No, you give a gift at Christmas because you want to see the look on that person's face. But even if they don't respond or react, you still give the gift because you want to feel happy from the knowledge that you gave something. So in the end, there's always an end result of being happy, pleasure, self-satisfaction. And I think that's one of the reasons that, especially in Christianity, pleasure has a lot of problems in church, because when people hear it, they associate it either one with selfishness, self-motivated goals, or they associate it with sexuality, sensuality, which immediately people's brains then goes to wrong, bad, sinful, unpure. But that's not true just because that's where your mind goes. I mean, just because people automatically associate the word pleasure with those things does not make pleasure bad. And I think it's interesting because there are people in church who they use the word pleasure in a negative connotation often. They say, we seek pleasure. And I'm like, who doesn't seek pleasure? But yeah, there does have to be some explanation of it, because people then, like I said, it's like going back to the beginning where I said people are afraid of things getting out of control. Another word, sensuality. I forgot who I heard speaking on this, but they said, when you hear the word sensuality, it doesn't actually mean sensuality as in sexual, as most people think it does. It just means of the senses, of the five senses. But because in our current culture we relate it to that, that's our only association with it, is that, sexual connotation of the word. Let's see what else I have. Okay. There's some other cool stuff. I got all these charts out from my other class that might come in handy. I did a whole 2 lessons on play and pleasure. Oh yeah, there's so many verses in the Bible that use the word pleasant and pleasure and pleases. One, it says, at God's hand is pleasures. At his right hand is pleasures forevermore. It said when Eve looked at the fruit, she saw that it was pleasant to the eyes. That God created this creation with things that not only taste good and smell good, but when you look at them, they have an appealing nature. And then one of my favorites is in the Old Testament, where it says God is in the heavens and he does as he pleases. And I think that can have two meanings. I think it can mean he does whatever he wants because he's God, but it's also, when you do something as you please, again, the root word of pleasure is to please. You do things because they bring happiness to you, they bring fulfillment, they bring joy. So if people have trouble with pleasure, then they need to go to the Bible, because I didn't write these verses. I didn't write that pleasure's at God's right hand forevermore. I didn't say that God does as he pleases. I didn't say that the fruit was pleasant. He wrote this. The other interesting thing, I always find it very fascinating that it says the joy of the Lord is our strength. It could have been anything else. Could have been the strength of the Lord is our strength, the power of the Lord. No, it says the joy. Why is joy at the center of what strengthens us? So there's something very interesting in that. One of the fruits of the Spirit is joy. Happy is the people whose God is the Lord. What is it? A heart something about a merry heart is good like wine to the soul. I can't remember the exact word. Something about a merry heart. Jesus' first miracle was turning water to wine. I mean, it was a party. I've heard some sermon I heard, somebody made the point, is like there is no like direct kind of like gospel goal related to that miracle he did. It wasn't like Jesus turned water to wine and then somebody said, oh my goodness, I want to get saved. It's like he just did it so the people at the party could have more fun. And we're gonna, let's see, that's about it. The last thing is, there's a good, I'm trying to see if I want to bring this out. There's a few more things actually. Another point on the like play and pleasure making people afraid. There's a really good sermon by this guy named Mike Bickle, and I think it's called The Beauty of God or The Emotions of God. And he makes this point. He says, if we were just fascinated with God's beauty, we wouldn't even have to like work to resist temptations, because we would be so just blown away. I remember my friend did this sermon once about, I think it was, I want to say Ezekiel, but it could be wrong. Basically, whatever prophets saw God, like in a vision, and it said like he was in awe for 7 days. Like he was just on the floor with his jaw dropped, like he just couldn't come out of this stupor. And I feel like if we were seeking that pleasure and that beauty and that playfulness in God, then there would never be a fear that talking about pleasure and play would result in this out of control nature of play and pleasure, what I think a lot of Christians are afraid of. And I likened it to, if you had a wife whose husband woke up every morning and just like complimented her, like, you're so beautiful, like you are the one, my life would be nothing without you, you're so important to me. This woman could go to work, and if she's got that thing on repeat in her mind, some guy could come up to her and say, hey, you want to sneak out for lunch? And she would just be like, on repeat, you're the most important thing. Like if you're so fascinated with the person who is enthralled with you, it's impossible to want someone else, because you've already fulfilled that desire that's in your heart to want to be desired, to want to be loved, to want to know that you're, somebody is like one to ravish you. So if we had that fascination with God, the devil could bring temptations all the time, and we'd just be like, oh, I'm just beloved, he thinks about me in the morning, So seeking pleasure in God and being happy in God is actually not just what I'm going to get into in a second. It's not like even a choice. It's like we should be mandated to do it. So some of you guys may have heard of the Piper book, Desiring God. So he starts off the book by talking about just this thing about how when we desire God, it should never be out of obligation, because, again, using like the husband and wife analogy, what woman or what man feels loved when they say, honey, I love you because you're my wife, or because I have to, you're my, it's like, no, everybody wants to be loved because they're desirable, they're desired from the person. So he uses this to say, like, when we worship God, when we're pursuing God, it should never be out of this obligatory spirit. It should be because we find delight in God. Because if you think about it, it's making a commentary on God. It's like, well, God, I love you because, well, you're God. And God is like, no, I'm hot. Like, I'm attractive. I've got it going on, actually. So you should desire me. So he gives five kind of progressive things that I think are really good. 5 convictions. He says, 1, the longing to be happy is a universal human experience, and it is good, not sinful. So happiness is a good desire. 2, we should never try to deny or resist our longing to be happy as though it were a bad impulse, but instead we should seek to intensify this longing and nourish it with whatever will provide the deepest and most enduring satisfaction. 3, The deepest and most enduring happiness is found only in God, not from God, but in God. 4. The happiness we find in God reaches its consummation when it is shared with others in the manifold ways of love. So he then talks about, it's like once you find God, you instantly want to share it with those around you, which then increases the pleasure even more. Just like, when you find the $2 of gas on the way home, and you're like, you guys won't believe it, I found gas that's for $2. You can't hold it to yourself. You can't contain it. And 5, to the extent we try to abandon the pursuit of our own pleasure, we fail to honor God and love people. Or to put it positively, the pursuit of pleasure is a necessary part of all worship and virtue. That is, the chief end of man is to glorify God by enjoying Him forever. And a little caveat on that last part, he says, the catechism that, I don't know who wrote it, but it said the chief end of man is to enjoy God and glorify Him forever. So he made the point, does that mean that glorifying God is separate from enjoying Him? So then he made his own, said, by enjoying God is how we glorify Him, to find delight in God. Then there's this other, the Mike Bickle guy. I thought this related very well too. He has this sermon called "The 7 Longings of the Human Heart." So 1, the longing for assurance of being enjoyed by God. 2, the longing to be fascinated. 3, the longing to be beautiful. 4, the longing to be great. 5, we long for intimacy without shame. 6, the longing to be wholehearted and passionate. And 7, the longing for significance to make a lasting impact. So I think that idea of happiness and wanting meaning and pleasure all wrap up into one another. So all that, to relate this to art, which is what we're here to talk about, is to, 1, remove the kind of stigmatism, is that the right word? Stigma associated with having fun, being playful, finding pleasure in the work you do, finding pleasure in the art you do, and even work as in job you do. Secondly, to I think set people free to be able to be playful, because I can never understand how people think you can be creative without being playful. I just don't get that. There's so many people that get so serious and they're like, oh, you want us to like act like little children? I'm like, to a certain degree, yeah, you should be able to act like a child, because kids don't care. They just make up stuff because it's fun. And that's why it's so good, because there is no attachment to this, what people are thinking about me. So I think allowing people to be set free to enjoy the playfulness and the pleasure in the art that they make, without feeling guilty that, hey, I really like jamming on the guitar, and I felt really good that I'm good at the guitar.
I feel so guilty about that.
You're
all the time.
Okay, many Christians, they feel guilty that they're good at what they do, because it's like you're being prideful, and it's like, well, what if you're just enjoying the fact that you can, like, nobody, we talked about this last week, nobody gets mad when the cook is complimented for their meal, and it's like, hey, good job on the meal. Oh no, man, no, it's not me, I don't want any praise for that. But it happens in art. So 1, nothing wrong with play and pleasure if put in the proper context. 2, play and pleasure are at liberty to be pursued after, because 1, it's going to set you free to make quality things. 2, you should just be free because God wants you to be free. And 3, play and pleasure are important. Well, play and pleasure are also important because they lead to innovation and novelty. Google and Facebook and all those things, people will tell you. And also, play and pleasure are good things, because if you're made in God's image and He is happy, then you are supposed to be reflecting that nature to the rest of the world. Because who wants to worship a God who is bored and sad all the time? That is not appealing or attractive to anyone. So, in some ways, like I said, it's mandatory that we give off this image that God is interesting, exciting, playful, happy, because the world is filled with enough people who are bored, uninteresting, not excited, unhappy.
There's enough Unitarians in this world.
So yeah, I think to me that's one of the most important points. If we are a reflection of God, then we should be reflecting stuff to people that is interesting and attractive, without the fear well, we talked about this last week. We have to get rid of the fear that we're stealing God's glory by being good at what we do and by taking pleasure and joy of what we do. Because if you're doing it right, people are going to see you for a second and then be like, oh, well, that can't be him because he's just playing the guitar. I play the guitar and I'm still not happy. So it has to be something else. You know? So there's the beginning. The bear. Whoever wants the bear first. Or if you had something in the book that you really wanted to talk about. He talked a little bit about play.
I think there's that great quote Piper uses at the beginning of the book where C.S. Lewis said, "To sin is to be too easily pleased." Unfortunately, since the number one tool, the number one method of evangelism in Christianity is to say, you're actually not happy. You would be happy if you knew God. The sex you're having, the parties you're going to, you're having pleasure, but you're not actually fulfilled. So because that's been the main method of sort of communicating to people their need for Christ, what ends up happening, it becomes very difficult once people get into Christianity to see how it actually shifts back to pleasure and actually celebration and happiness without it also being mired by sin. I think people who are quote-unquote sinning are indeed actually enjoying themselves. They're just settling for less. They're not fulfilled, and they don't have the truth, and they're not free. When you're having an adultery, it seems like you're getting what you want, but now you're imprisoned on guilt. If I tell a lie to you to make you think I'm a better person than I actually am, I am now imprisoned to you, because if you found out I'm lying, then you can ruin me. Any act of sin, actually, we do because we think it will make things better, but it actually doesn't. So it's a false sense of joy, of fulfillment. I think, too, where you have modern Gnosticism, where earth matter equals bad, spirit equals good, any pleasure or play or anything you have in the world, therefore is in the world, and therefore not good. And also you mix that in with a dosage of seriousism that we get from capitalism, and how work is to not be, to play is to not be productive, and it's also childish, and you just get this lovely zeitgeist that confuses us from every angle. But to your point on play, there's this lovely quote by Bohr, Oppenheimer, I believe, and he was really smart, and he says, "There are children playing in the street who could solve some of my top problems in physics, because they have modes of sensory perception that I lost long ago." One of the reasons why it's also very important to maintain play and pleasure and fun is so you actually have a advanced sensory spiritual perception, not only of God, but the world around you, seeing that the world around you is a dim version of that higher reality. So not only is play necessary for all the reasons you listed out, but joy is also necessary so that you can actually see. So that's what we see. There's something else. Yeah, the connection between pleasure and sex. We also have a very poor theology on sex. Rob Bell did the book on sex. It's good. I guess you're not allowed to reference him anymore because he wrote Love Wins, but that book is good. C.S. Lewis in The Four Loves has some good stuff on sex. It's really, that's an unfortunate. There's not a clear theology on sexuality, so that also kind of leads to the problem.
Yeah, well, I think we'll definitely do a section on sex, art, and God. But I think I was kind of inspired by this quote from the last chapter where it says, what is this guy he talked about? This is the books that you bought at the book sale, Matthew Fox.
Yeah.
In his book, Original Blessing.
I got that.
He's condemned for what he calls fall redemption spirituality, for not teaching believers about the new creation or creativity, about justice making and social transformation, or about eros, play, pleasure, and the God of delight. I just thought that those last listings, like Eros, play, pleasure, and the God of delight. Just that word delight too. Just the idea that God himself is very childlike, in that when he's done making something, it's like a little kid's like, look, mommy, look what I did. You know, I feel like that's how he was when he was done with, look what I did. Very playful, very, very innocent. But then also Daniel's point about being too easily pleased. Well, yeah, because the Bible says, you know, sin is pleasurable for a season. Like, it doesn't deny it. It's like, yeah, this is fun. That's why you're doing it. But then it doesn't last. And that's why, you know, going back to here, with you know, he's saying you need to find the most deep, satisfying, long-lasting, you know, pleasure ever. And I like how he's framing it as if, you know, you're actually doing yourself a disservice, and it's almost like a sin to a certain degree not to. You know, he's like, why are you settling for this cheap thrills when you obviously have a desire for something much deeper? You know, I think also playfulness very much speaks to childlikeness. So here's my wonderful drawings. I think this is also the other problem, is people confuse. Well, me and my friend had this discussion, and this is what came out of it. He said people are afraid because they hear childlike and they think childish. Where the Bible is always telling people to be childlike, come to God as a child, you know, suffer the children to come unto me. Everything is always in the reference of that humble attitude. But then, you know, Paul says, I put away childish things. So he's saying, yeah, you can't act like a little kid when there's time to be doing serious things. But you are still supposed to have this child demeanor to you, where you approach things with a sense of awe and wonder, you know. Because I think if you don't approach things with childlikeness, you go to God and you're like, okay, I've seen this before. It was like God is sitting there like, the angels fall on their face over and over saying, holy, 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 and you're telling me that you've seen this before. You know, it just doesn't work. I think another reason that play is not. I think another reason that play is attached to this sense of something that is childish is because if you look at playfulness and pretend and make-believe and faith, they all are different things on different levels. They all are similar things, but just different ways to approach it. So if if the devil can get you to start thinking that playfulness and having that ability to kind of like dream and envision and see beyond the natural is stupid and silly, and that's what kids do, then of course you're not going to have faith either. If play and faith mimic each other, then you're going to be like, oh, that's silly. Faith is silly. That's for kids. That's envisioning and dreaming things. That's looking at the invisible. I don't want to do that. So then, of course, you're not going to get the healing and the things that you need, because you're not going to know how to do it. So I think an attack on that childlikeness is very strategic in that it keeps us from being able to receive things from God, because now we're so adult that we don't need faith. We got this on our own.
I think we struggle so much with sort of cynicism that comes from being an adult and seeing the world as it really is.
Right.
Real world.
Yeah, exactly. When really that childlike heart is a heart of openness and teachability and a desire to be in wonder. Kids wake up every day and they're like, oh my gosh, what will happen today? And if we came to God with that same heart, that same open, teachable, expecting Him to show us wonderful things, expecting Him to do wonderful things in our lives, just how much different our lives would look.
Yeah.
I think the main thing that kills wonder is when you're worried about what you will eat tomorrow, what you will drink, what you will wear, which the Bible in Matthew 6 directly says, just seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you. Because then you're worried. Fear, as perfect love casts out fear, so fear casts out love. Once you lose love, you lose joy, wonder, and all those things fall apart. I think it's also problematic that we have a dichotomy between play and serious. I think there are many times when I was playing checkers when I was very serious, when I was working on building the fort, that I was very serious. You can be serious in the midst of play. Likewise, you can, in the middle of something serious, be playful. These are not dichotomies. Anyone who's children are very serious when they're playing a game.
Right.
They want to win, or maybe they want to build the castle the better. Or a musician, when they're playing on their guitar, they're very serious about it. We also have to wonder, what does the word play exactly mean? What does it mean to play? To play a game? Well, what are you doing then? Or to skip, to be happy? There's a way in which, once you actually look at it, play is just to do something joyful. And that's not necessarily bound to board games, hopscotch, or anything. But we make it that way in our mind. In the West, we are very dialectical in our thinking. I guess that's German. I'm not sure where this comes from. In the East, which Jesus is, in Christianity, is coming out of the middle. Is coming out of the East. They're much more synthetic. They don't see dichotomies as easily. They see it all kind of goes together. And I wonder if a problem is, too, where we interpret so much of what we read out of the Bible into dialectics that are set up against one another rather than blending together into something like a watercolor painting. I think that also gets in the way of us understanding play, seriousness, work, fun, and things like that. Because it is very difficult for most people to understand, well, how can it be work if you enjoy it? Mm-hmm. Why is that a difficult concept to grasp? If you really think about it, why is that difficult to grasp? What is work? Work is to do something. Why is it so hard to enjoy doing something? Because it just doesn't sound right. We've been trained to think that just doesn't sound right. Mm-hmm. And yet we never stop and go, wait a minute, when kids are playing, they're very serious. Why can't the reverse also be the case? And what else is play other than a joyful work?
Mm-hmm. And also I think our theology of work is a little bit skewed at times as well, because we're work is this awful thing, but really it was there before the fall.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not a product of the fall.
That's work was part of paradise.
Yeah, it's something that's made to actually bring us pleasure and bring us closer to God and fill us as human beings.
That's exactly right.
I have two thoughts. One is doing things as an adverb, doing things joyfully or hopefully, and the other thought was kind of in that you have a little bit of margin in what you're doing, so you're not giving your full 100% attention to the problem that's part of the job. There's some excess for you to enjoy what you're doing and to dress it in green or red velvet in your mind while you do it, and not have the problem define yourself like you're in a cage, but rather have it be just something that's within reach, that you are having an opportunity to reach out and work on, but there's other things within reach too, and you're not in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we tend to, as humans, define our situations by our problems, not our joys. And we focus on what's wrong or our lack rather than our fulfillment. We let the bad thing define the problem set rather than let it be one of the problems in the set.
Say that again?
We let the problem or our unhappiness define the problem set rather than be a problem in the set.
What do you mean the problem set?
The terms by which we go about our life, as in what calibrates or configures what we're doing in our day, rather than just another task, rather than just another thing.
You mean that you have some structure, and then the things for the day are within that structure?
Mm-hmm. That's
rather
right.
than the things for the day give you a structure?
Yes, and what I'm saying is the structure, what we as humans tend to be, we tend to make the structure that the things in the day are within be the negative, be a bad feeling, be, what am I going to eat tomorrow, what am I going to wear, and that colors everything that we see and do, rather than let our joys be what color everything we do. We focus on our fears rather than our joys.
Yeah,
or what we're doing wrong.
So evidenced by, like, if you look at your thought life, like, what is your mind automatically going to? Is it going to, like, your problems and it's, like, getting negative? Or are you looking at all, like, things you get to do and looking forward to them, looking to them as positive, being grateful for the things that have happened?
Yeah, that's right.
Having that posture of optimism.
Yeah, that's right. The spirit of fear versus the spirit of thanksgiving.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, on what you were saying about, what were you saying? Childlikeness play.
You can be serious while playing.
Play and seriousness. There's some interesting age where all of a sudden being playful no longer is acceptable. You know, it's very apparent that when there's a child born and they're young, you nurture that, like, oh, you want toys? Oh yeah, that's so cute. And you make a Lego thing, like, oh, that's really good. Like, you praise that exuberance and that expression of playfulness. But then somewhere around middle school, high school, your parents just like yank that away from you without ever explaining why. They're just like, well, it's time to get a job, you know, which is very cruel because I'd much rather you just like put me to work from the beginning and I know the truth that work and life sucks than for you to tell me that, oh wow, you can play Legos and color and look at all these great things. By the way, no. So yeah, I don't know what it is about. Nobody can really put their finger on it, but it's just very apparent that when you reach middle school or high school, that your parents it's like your parents just start changing, and they don't really tell you why. And then all of a sudden, all the things that you used to do are no longer acceptable. So what I came up with is, yeah, that's the problem. Is how responsibility is introduced. So if this is the beginning of your life, you're a child, and then over here is the end, where you're becoming an adult. What should happen is you're allowed to play, and then when your parents start to see you get to this age, what they need to do is not yank play out of the equation, but they need to gradually introduce responsibility into the cycle and say, hey Billy, I want to show you a new kind of play. Now, you're not going to get to play as much in the other way that you did, but now you're going to get to do other things. It's like, remember when mommy always had to take you to the store? Well, guess what? Now you get to go to the store on your own. It's like you have to frame it in such a way that it's positive, and because it is positive. It's not like you're just lying to them. It's like you could now be more autonomous. And with that comes responsibility that you have to take care of yourself, and maybe you have to get a job because you want to go to the movies. But you don't like frame it as this. I mean, that's the problem. It's just like we were just saying about work. The problem is parents, the way they see work, they then teach that to their children. Work sucks. Work is a burden. Work is a chore. Work is a labor. Work is a pain. So it's time for you to grow up because my life sucks. So now your life has to suck. So yeah, I think that's what needs to be done. Is you don't stop playing. You just simply show that play is growing up with you. Like you play and the play grows up. And you know, you're here. Somebody's bringing you a bottle when you're little. You grow up, you go on vacation, somebody's bringing you everybody likes to be in that position when they're being served and they're, you know, on the beach or they're in the cradle. You don't stop. So you don't stop desiring the things you desire, you just desire them differently in a more grown up way. I mean,
that's why I like being sick. It's like, Rachel, can I bring you some soup? Yes, bring me some soup.
Exactly.
I need someone in my life to bring me some soup.
And think about the childlikeness, like that desire to be believed in. You know, it's like, why does it when we have little kids, it's like, man, you can do anything. You're so great. I bet you can take on anything. And then when you get older, it's like, well, you suck. You know, it's time to grow up. This is what's wrong with you. You don't do anything right. And it's like, why does this desire to be told that you're a good thing never stops? So why is it that then the parents and the bosses stop? But no, we go to motivational conferences. Why? Because we want somebody to tell us, I believe in you. You can do a good thing with your life. So it's just about not removing play, but how does play grow up with you?
Growing play up. That'd be a nice title of an essay.
Growing up with play.
Growing up with play. Play grows up.
Make it like a children's book where play is personified.
That'd be interesting. Growing up with play.
Yeah, there's this rapper. He calls himself Man-Child, and so I took that to mean, within us both, within us all, there's consistently a man or woman and a child. Because as we were talking about earlier, how we approach God, you have to have a level of confidence and you have to have a level of humility in sort of balance, because there is a point where God is like, okay, you can get out of bed. He's not gonna like hold your hand through everything. He's like, I've given you the ability to move your body, so do that. Mm-hmm. But then when it comes time to get a job and you don't necessarily know how to do it, then that's when the child posture comes in. You're like, okay, God, I don't know how this works. I need your help. So we're constantly doing both. We're constantly adults and we're children. And the last point on that is, I always find it fascinating, why did God create man to go from child to man, when he could have just said man, man, woman, 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 all grown up? There's obviously some reason that he wants us to be children first and then grown-ups, because he's showing something about himself. Because I think the other thing is, like, when we hear man was made in the image of God, we think quite literally man, but it's the human being is made in God's image, so the child is also made in God's image. So there's something that he's trying to reflect through children and show us.
Or alternatively, the child and the man are both part of one life.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. 2 points. Saint Augustine, he claimed that it was very possible that Adam and Eve were children when they fell. Actually, I always thought it was an interesting point that they were children. 2, one of the problems that we have when it comes to play is what we envision when you say an adult plays. We envision drinking, partying, and promiscuous activity. It's like children, it's okay to play, but our only concept of play for adults is that stuff, not creativity. We don't see play as writing a novel, as doing a career, because then we'd be like, oh, that's awesome. Likewise, since that's kind of the cultural dichotomy, is like grown-up play equals this promiscuous activity, therefore the church is like, no, being an adult, you play is not good, because that's what we envision you mean when you're saying we should be allowed to play. Because we don't readily associate adult play as equaling being creative. We associate it with being crazy in college or something like that. So I think that's actually one of the major problems, is we are yet to make the leap to understand that when an adult plays, they are writing a novel, they're doing what we're doing right now. You're talking about ideas and you're really growing from it. We right now, our idea of when you say we should be allowed to play, our culture would say, go be nuts on a Saturday night. So that barrier needs to be torn down. I think it would help a lot if that association was broken. Rachel?
Many people compartmentalize their life to the point where they have a hobby, where in their hobby they're allowed to have fun and play. And then the idea is that that's special for certain times in a certain box of hobby materials or in a certain setting.
Right.
And many people are more comfortable having play in that
box. Absolutely.
I think also what you're saying about play relates very much to how we view money in the economy. Mm-hmm. Because it's not just... Because I think that might apply what you're saying as far as in the church, where it's like, oh, play equals pleasure equals promiscuity equals sin. But it's like, if you're a non-believer, you're like, yeah, let's play. Yeah. Those aren't negative things to you. You're like, yeah, of course, let's play. But I think for people who are maybe non-believers, when they hear play, they hear not serious, child, work will not get done, money will not be made, therefore I will not eat, therefore the factory shuts down, therefore the economy collapses, and if the economy collapses, which we put all our hope in, then our world has collapsed. So I think from a more global perspective, people are afraid of playfulness because they think that means that you are at no point going to be serious about what you're doing.
That's right.
And then they've put all their hope and trust in this thing called the economy. So then when that doesn't work, then what hope is left for them? Because I just imagine, when you talk to business people, you say that word and they just kind of give you the little smirk, or if you do like one of these ropes courses, like it's like, it's okay that we do this every once in a while, but we don't want to go too far. We don't want this happening every week or anything like that. We want to make sure we keep a tight rein on this. Where you have a company like Google and Facebook and Pixar, they, like you were saying earlier about, your kid, you're working hard, you're playing hard. Google and Facebook, their entire environment is one of people doing crazy stuff, riding around on scooters and stuff in the office that other offices wouldn't have. But they actually are so passionate about what they're doing that they know when it's time to okay, well, I had my time, now I'm back to coding, And on top of that, they don't see the coding as not play. It's just a different kind of play. So they want to work hard on the code because the code is just another type of play from this other play. And the two are feeding each other. Because if you just come from this great event where you and your teammates played volleyball, then you go sit down and you're ready to code and you feel refreshed and invigorated. And then you put your passion into that code, and then you get some brilliant idea, you go run, and you go, everything, if you're constantly in the method of being passionate and pleasured in what you're doing, it's just going to keep feeding all those other things. It's not going to be, it's like Rachel was saying, it's compartmentalized.
Yeah, I think two things. One, those people who are passionate about their work, you could try to get them to stop working, and they get angry at you. They'd go play, and they come back, no, you don't have to work today. So, no, I'm going to stay in the office and finish it, because they are project-oriented. Right. They view the play as what they're doing between the projects, rather where, ironically, most people view projects and work what you do between the play. We view the society as a whole views work what you do in order to play versus play in order to work. So these companies that actually are more playful are actually more serious, ironically, because they love the work. They're just playing so that they can get back to the work. Hi, beautiful. The other problem, too, to Rachel's point, two more points. To Rachel's point, there's not enough of a hobby culture, actually. We do have that, but we've even lost a lot of that. So we've even become more confused about the role of what's the point of being able to make tables, what's the point of being really good at writing or things like that, because hobbies are not even prevalent.
People apologize if they only just play board games with their friends.
That's right.
They're kind of embarrassed to tell you what they did over the weekend.
Yeah, they are. Absolutely. Because it didn't sound productive.
Or it didn't sound as cool as if they had gone water skiing.
Yep, that's exactly right. So you feel like you have to apologize if your hobby is not something that the corporate world would would view as cool. So that's a problem too.
I feel like we're looking across the rings of Saturn in this. Mm-hmm. You could poke your head in this area and see what it's like to be an extension of your computer and the company you work at. And kind of being on the inside of that and feeling like that's what you are. And then, if I observe some of my colleagues, sometimes I feel like they are not capable of pulling themselves away from the computer because they feel guilty if they're away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Well.
Yeah, I think that applies in most of the working world, unfortunately. Which, ironically, that then freezes up the mind and productivity of people. In their effort to be super productive, they end up being very unproductive. And that's what companies like you're saying, the Google and the Facebooks and any of them, Ken Rogers, opposable mind companies grasp. The last thing I was going to say is another major problem is people don't see how you can have fun if you don't have money. You have to have money to do things that are fun, because there's a lack of creativity in people figuring out how to have fun without money. Therefore, you have to work to make money to have fun. And also, since you have that split between work and fun, it doesn't make sense that you could have fun before you have the money to pay for fun. Therefore, it doesn't make sense that you could have fun while working, because you work to make the money to have fun. So that's the cause and effect that confuses people up.
I think part of that too is like also we've just forgotten like how to enjoy people.
Yes.
We
Oh,
think
yes.
we need to be entertained by something or gather around like an activity when really like
So we have
some
to
of the
pay
best
for it.
times are
Yeah.
just sitting with people and enjoying life, enjoying conversation.
That's exactly right.
And my second thought was when you guys were talking about like work and having to like almost be attached to your work and like keeping to do it and do it and do it and do it, is my pastor was talking about the Sabbath and why we find it so hard to rest, and that like if someone sometimes keeps the Sabbath, they're almost doing it like out of obligation. So then you feel like guilty about it and you're not actually resting. And it sort of stems from this idea that we have to like earn our value or our worth, and so we have to like work to do that, when really like there is absolutely nothing we can do to become anything more or less valuable, because our worth is defined by God, and He delights in us and He's pleased with us, and He's happy when He looks at us, you know, and like that puts us at rest, and that puts us at a place where we can just enjoy life and take a Sabbath.
Yeah, that's a big point we talk about a lot: rest and worth and being. And I always use the diagram of the line and the circle.
What's that?
So it's all of life is made up of linear and cyclical events. So today is Tuesday. Next week will be Tuesday. The week after that will be Tuesday. We're moving forward in time, but yet we return to the same thing over and over. And so I equate the circle with being, just like you're saying, that rest, because it's being is the act of actively doing nothing. You know, you're on purpose resting.
Yeah.
You're at home. Somebody says, "Oh, what'd you do this weekend?" You say, "I didn't do anything." You didn't actually do nothing. Like, you breathed, you got up, you had dinner, you watched TV. Like, those are activities, but the end result was for it to be for your own, you know, rest and benefit. Whereas what you're saying is like, you know, but we feel like we have to do something linear based. Like, oh, what did you do? Oh, I got out all of those mailers for the, you know, the company.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
Check out the checklist.
yeah. It has an end goal, which is usually related to a task or an objective. Whereas, you know, what you're saying is the end goal of people is people. You know, you can't really define it other than that. They're like, what did you do? I spent time with people, you know, my CAA group. But what did you guys do? Like, we spent time. You know, it's like the whole nature of a relationship is to spend time with the person because you enjoy the person, not because you're going to necessarily get something out of it that you can say, look what I got. You know, you just nothing. There's nothing to show for it other than the thing itself. So I think that's another reason when it comes to play and work. It's like work tends to be much more a linear thing because you have an objective, you have a task. I know I need to do this, and by 5 o'clock this will be done. Whereas play is just self-contained. It's like you did it, and the sake of doing it was the sake of doing it. You know, you can't prove to somebody what necessarily came out of it. And even if you could, most of the time when you do playful things, it's kind of like sloppy and messy. You know, I was just messing around with some musical notes, trying to come up with something new, and people are like, oh, cool, you're right, you know, but you're like, I'm just trying stuff out, I'm experimenting, I'm trying to see where it goes, if it goes anywhere. Whereas if I said, oh yeah, I made 5 songs today, I got them all done and complete, you know, even if those songs aren't really well done, people are like, oh, great, oh, you've been writing, great, you know, but the person who experimented for the whole day and nothing came out of it, they're seen as wasting time, but it's not that they're wasting time. It's like, one, they had fun doing it. Like, they did it because they wanted to do it. And I think second is like, you just may not see the benefits immediately, you know. You stumble on some new experience. I mean, the guy who's in the lab trying out new stuff, it may not come this Saturday, but then maybe a year from now, he's like, oh yeah, it's like that thing that I did, I put that away. It makes me think of I usually use this story when I'm talking about failure, but it's cool because it relates here too. So Post-it notes, the way they became invented was a guy was trying to make a much more strong adhesive, but he ended up making actually a weaker adhesive. So he thought he failed, so he just like put it away. But then later his friend, who was also an employee, was in a choir, and he would put these little sheets of paper in his book to keep the place when they were in choir rehearsal, but they would always fall out. So then he remembered that his friend had made this sort of sticky but not sticky stuff, and he was like, what if we, you know, applied it to the back of this, and, you know, voila, Post-it notes.
Thank you.
So just the idea that what seemed like it was wasted time just wasn't ready at that moment. It just took a little more time for somebody else to see the benefit from it. So I think that's important, especially if we're talking about like innovation and how this affects our culture and economy. It's like people who are quote unquote playing right now are seen to be wasting their time, but it's those people who are down the road who make things where it's like, oh, thank you very much for playing around with that solar powered stuff because now we need it. You know, thank you very much for playing around with those chemicals because now we need them.
Or maybe not.
Or maybe not.
The guys in there, they'll play tunes for hours if you let them. And they're not having a band rehearsal.
Right.
And that is perplexing to some people.
Right.
But it's kind of like a sponge is in the ocean and the water comes along, and when it's higher water pressure, the water goes into it. And when it's lower water pressure, the water goes out of it, and the sponge doesn't do anything. But it's still alive, and it's still participating in the ecosystem.
I think play too is so just important to the creative process because I've been creating a lot of dance this semester, and whenever I sort of like make an end goal for myself, or I'm sort of like, this is what I want my work to say, it almost stifles me and makes me like not create anything at all because I'm just sitting there like sort of stuck in anxiety. But when I'm just like, you know what, I'm just going to create what like my body wants to create today, or just like sort of see what comes out and let there be like a multiplicity of ideas and then narrow it down later, you know, just sort of letting that like flow and that enjoyment of the process happen.
I wonder if different kinds of creativity comes out in different times of human history because of the culture. Like, that kind of creativity seems to be working a lot for me, where I'm just spitting out random thoughts constantly and gathering them together on little pieces of paper in a box and hope that something is going to conglomerate out of it. But that you sit there and try to build something from here and build it now, that kind of creativity isn't necessarily coming.
Yeah, you're narrowing it like too soon before you even let it live.
Yeah, I mean, to Rachel, both of the 2 points, Edison, in making the light bulb, said he came up with 999 ways not to make a light bulb in the process. I mean,
know of a light bulb in Charlottesville that's an Edison one that still works.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
He built them pretty good.
That's amazing.
Where is it?
It's at a lady's house. She's about 90.
Wow.
Sweet.
On Raya Road.
Good for her. That's really amazing. That's really cool, right? But no, I mean, that doing stuff that doesn't seem to have a point is inseparable from the success. And the playing in there, of which is pointless, actually is what makes possible a point. You can't have one without the other. Two, I would be interested to see if perhaps the language of English, thus kind of creating this easy separation between words like play and work, has been part of what has constructed our way of thinking to make it difficult to see how play can be work. In Russia, the guy who was going around writing a great novel, the culture is like, wow, you know, that's a prophet of God, the Spirit's working through him, he's got a huge work. There was almost pitied. He's like, man, he's got a tougher work than everyone else. You would have in Rome, I mean, there's just been throughout cultures where the artist is either this into being that the muse works through, that has a great responsibility of actually catching that vision, versus today when it's kind of, we don't view when they have a great idea as, wow, we need to create space and work to enable that person to do that. So there's been a shift toward the beginning of the 20th century, and I think it's further created this split in our mind between work and play. That play, I mean, you would have many cultures that would refer to play as that moment of elation upon accomplishment of a given work, of a given creative act, of the elation of finishing a bridge. I think it's a new concept that you can have such of a thing. I think it's actually a newer concept that you can split fun and work. And that fun is not viewed as the feeling of success upon doing a work. I think you see people who do no meaningful work, who have fun all the time, and they don't really enjoy it at all. So they're having fun.
You're talking about like that harvest, that dance at the end of the harvest kind of thing.
Yes,
or having
exactly.
lemonade
Yeah,
at
that's
the end
right.
of the workday.
That's right. Like we were talking about Tolstoy last week. I was mentioning that scene. Yeah, that's exactly right. Like you're like, yes, we did a great work. Now we're having fun. Now we're enjoying ourselves. I think it's a kind of new concept where you can actually think you can get one without the other. But unfortunately, what we do now is we're like, well, you have to work to have fun. But the reason you have to work to have fun is because you have to have money to have fun. It's you have this middleman that creates the split. It's not that work directly follows into fun and that fun directly follows into work. No, work leads to money, of which then you can choose to use to create fun. So there's a split between work and fun due to our philosophy of money. Because we don't know what money is as a culture, actually, in the proper function of it. So,
Or somebody else decided for us what it is.
Yeah.
Told us.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you just made me think of a bunch of stuff. The first is, well, I think it's interesting, like knowing my own personality and how I've changed over the recent years of how I approach things. So I used to be very much opposed to organization. And I think it's partially because the people in my life who were organized never did it in a kind way. It was just like, oh, we just put stuff away and it's done. You just got to keep stuff neat. I was like, well, maybe it's easy for you, but I don't approach life that way. Like, my room, if it's like generally clean, is clean. I'm not going to like have the books straight and everything. No, it's never going to happen.
To be fair, your room is not clean.
By my standards, it's clean. Okay?
Well, those are some very...
Well, it's my
very
standard.
low standards.
Nobody else lives there but me.
That's true. You're the one who has to live
Thank
there.
you.
Have you seen the show Hoarders?
Yes, I've seen the show Hoarders.
That's like...
Your room is not immaculate either, or your house.
Oh, my room's pretty clean, actually.
Your room is okay, but your kitchen is...
Can you give a workshop on how you do it?
How I clean?
Yeah.
No.
Why not?
Because why would anyone want to learn that from me?
I'd love to learn that. You give a workshop here at Unoya and invite people.
Put things, pretty simple. You just like move things into proper.
See? It's simple. It's just easy,
The
right?
concept of proper places to me has no meaning. So
Yeah,
you have
thank
to
you.
start
I
further back.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously, in my mind, everything floats in outer space, and you
Yeah, I
should
get
shove
it.
it here and
I get
there
it.
and dig through
Okay,
it.
first you have to find a sense of purpose and meaning. That's the first step.
I
Step
enjoy
two, you
digging
put
through
things in their place.
I am like a mole in the ground. I'm like, cool.
See, but no, what you're saying is like you put things in your place. Yeah, like my mind doesn't work like that. The place is where I put it. That is their place. There is no set place.
My problem with place is that if I'm moving fast, then different places become acceptable
Right.
Yeah.
when I'm moving fast than when I'm not moving fast. Or when I'm tired, when I'm not tired. Different places gain or lose value for holding things temporarily. Everything's floating temporarily balanced on top of something. And it'll tip over.
Yeah, I
That's the
get
way your life is, and that's how it's gonna
No,
spill out into like the physical world too.
Life is
Exactly. That's why I need you to explain this more.
Okay, well, where I was going.
I mean, I was just gonna say, I know that. Like, I'll put books in particular stacks because that's gonna go for the project when I'm done with this other project, and then where it's at actually does have a very set purpose and design, but it would look random if you didn't know that set design that I had. Or I can go, I'll get to this document tomorrow, and I put it next to the laptop, and then 3 months later I pick it up as if no time passed at all. I do that all the time. I'll have something that suddenly becomes invisible. It's like it becomes invisible next to me, but I know it's there, and once I'm done with everything, I pick it up. It's like, you hadn't touched that for like a month. It's like, yeah, but I was getting to it. And then it looks chaotic. It looks like your desk is
It's
crazy.
really hard when I manage my fridge like this, but
Food can go bad.
Well, yeah, so this personality book called Type Talk, it says, if there's a misplaced document, an organized person has filed it but has forgotten where it is. A creative person just doesn't know where it is.
Or a creative person just hasn't gotten to it yet.
Right.
They know where it is, and they actually want it there, because if you moved it out of that place, then they wouldn't know where it is. But if you kept it there, and they actually want it there because it's stacked on top of a particular piece of paper that's going to remind them that they need to get the book from that shelf that they're going to read with that book over there.
Well, yeah, I've actually like sabotaged myself because I was like, all right, this time around I'm gonna be like organized. So then I put like paperwork in the paperwork folder. So then I look everywhere, and then the last place I look is the paperwork. I was like, why is this in the paperwork folder? It's never in the paperwork folder. But for once in my lifetime, it was there.
I don't usually remember that I have folders
Or that.
because there's like a pie tin on top of it, full of marbles and pine cones.
This is Rachel's world.
I mean,
What's that?
I can only use.
I was thinking.
I can only use folders if I'm putting it in to be done with it. Like
Right.
it's marked spring 2013 material, I put it in and then it's away. I don't use folders to organize. But actually this gets into one of the reasons why the society doesn't favor creativity, because they
Right.
view this as organized is better than unorganized.
Right.
But the creative people are the ones who look like they're doing a bunch of random stuff
Right.
and making a bunch of random notions. They don't think they're unorganized
Right.
at all. They actually have very intentional intent. They're playing those strings on the violin to find the sound,
Right.
which you have to do. And since you can't easily, no one else can grasp why you put that book over there and that book
Right.
over there except you. I have to come into your office and say you're not doing a good job. You
Right.
have no control.
Yeah.
When in fact you have a lot.
You're not staying on one table, on one surface.
Yeah.
Right.
You operate by having multiple
That's right.
overhead projector slips on your map simultaneously, and you are constantly diving in and out
Yes,
of various depths. You
Yeah.
don't change. You don't stay the same size
correct.
in your thinking. For me, it's incredibly difficult to stay on one task.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Really difficult. But these are things that you get better with practice, and I frankly admit I've been rather lazy at training myself in this area.
So where I was going to go with this is the point I'm going to end up in is the importance of the body of Christ working together, because you have somebody like me who I don't favor organization first. I favor spontaneity, flow, creativity, chaos. But recently I've been like, it seems like I just wasted an hour trying to find that music file I wanted to work on. Maybe I'll make a folder so next time I could use that hour actually having fun creating. So now that it benefits me, I want to be more organized. So from the other side, so I realized people who are typically more creative don't like to organize first, because they're like, okay, this is going to take away from my time from being creative. Whereas people who are more organized are usually like, yeah, I don't see what this playing around stuff is going to do. We just need to get to the structured stuff first. So it's like people who have the flexibility of fear being like stifled, and then the people who are more grounded feel that the chaos is not going to lead to anything. But if we could see that the two of those are supposed to be working in unison, like, God made every part to work with the other, then we could be like, okay, how do you work? Well, how do I work? Well, let's figure this flow and this routine out and work together. So that was the first thing I was thinking of, because we were talking about play and work. So if you associate the creativity flow with play and the work maybe with more structure. Also,
just to add, I like the word flow because a river is within the structure of the river bed, but it's always moving and changing.
yeah, this guy who came to our church in this conference, like, set my mind on this course that has just gone since then. But he said, have you ever looked at the universe and seen how it's both one part kind of like ordered and seemingly unordered? He's like, you have the universe and the planets are like on schedule. Just every year, it's coming around at the same time. He's like, but yet there's like random asteroids and matter and debris and nebula that just kind of float freeform. He's like, then if you look at the human body, there's a rigid skeletal structure, but then you have blood and tissue and muscles and all these soft, crazy things. And he's like, that's how, God, he's both parts. He knows how to be structured and he knows how to be free all in one. So to me, seeing how, like you're saying, the river, but yet it's contained. I mean, you look at a tree, it's got structure and it's strong, but the wind blows the leaves very, in a flexible way. So if you look deep enough at everything, we can see how these things are working together. But that was going back to what we're talking about with work and play, and how we have this dichotomy now, how one is during one time and one is during the other. I was thinking about something when I was writing one day. I was like, if you think about when you work, you cannot work without having produced or created something. Somebody who takes a block of wood and shaves away, they're working, they're sweating, they're putting effort and energy, but in the end is a creation, you know, a sculpture, or even if it's a chair or
Even
whatever
if it's
it is.
just some recyclable first draft that you're not going to use. It's
Yeah.
you're still altering something in the physical world.
Yeah, in the end, there is a made thing. It's, you know, you're making, you're crafting, you're shaping, you're creating. So you can't not create from work. Whenever you're working, you're always creating. And the two, I said, you know, they're intertwined. But yeah, we don't associate the word creativity with work so much because work has a serious or rigorousness to it. You know, you have to sweat. And if you, like I said, if you've enjoyed it, then you must have not really worked because work is not supposed to be fun. And I think that's also partially related to the fact that, you know, when God said to Adam and Eve, He's like, well, now work is going to be a burden. You know, now you're going to toil on the ground, and it's going to be hard to toil. That's for people who still live under the curse. But if you're a Christian, you no longer live under the curse. So there's no reason to be toiling effortlessly, you know, needlessly, and, you know, make it, you just toiling basically, you know, endless kind of a cycle of non-produce. Because you can work and produce nothing, or you can work and produce something. So I think, you know, the toil, the labor.
I thought you just said if you work, you always produce something.
Okay, well, let me say it like this.
Activity versus productivity.
I mean, activity is making something.
Activity
I guess
could
I
be
should
me
say-
running around in circles in my house looking for something that's missing, and I'm not producing anything except a trail behind me.
Producing endorphins.
Well, how about of
What's an
value? I should
endorphin?
say of value.
I think endorphins are pretty important.
Well, I'm not saying endorphins. Think about it like this. I can...
Sometimes
Who
I
are
just
you to
want to
decide
tell them to
what's
go get
valuable?
saved.
I'm just cutting you off.
Thank you.
Before you even get to the point you're making, I'm just going to put it right there.
Okay, think about the landfills that we fill every day with trash. We're creating something, but it's waste. It's not something that we want to look back in history and be like, it's 20th century. Good, you know. It's you know, we're not proud of that. It's a creation, yes, but it's a pile of crap. Versus somebody who takes those same aluminum cans and trash and like makes a sculpture. Like one we would see as valuable, the other one we would see as a byproduct. So I would say one has intention and the other one has a byproduct.
It's a byproduct, I guess. But it was put there intentionally, like a pile of trash.
I mean, it was put there.
And the point was to get it away from like other people. So.
But overall, well then you have
Would
to
you rather have it in your room? Or, well, not you, but like, would Daniel rather have it in his room or like in a hole?
Depends on what the trash is.
But then
Maybe
you
I
have
could
to,
make like a robot out of it.
but then you have to start thinking holistically. Like, is it good all around? Yeah, it's good that we got it away from us, but now it's closer to somebody else, or it's closer to the earth, which is then going to get poisoned and then come back to us, or it's going to be closer to the next generation that we're like.
Yeah.
It has to have a holistic good, I would say, a good in all ways, all shapes, all forms, all time, all space.
So the work's only producing something if it's holistic.
Yeah.
What's your definition of disaster?
Yeah.
I mean,
Last thing, yeah, if you think about, you know, like, okay, like we're saying work and play, what's the name? It's not Picasso. Is it?
No.
Whatever. 1%, all genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. Every person who's ever had an idea realizes that the play part is pretty much over once it's time to get to work. You know, sure, I got this great idea on how to, you know, create something, but there's a big difference between me staying up every night till midnight and actually doing it. There's plenty of people with ideas. And then, I mean, like you dance. Even though you enjoy dancing on the stage, you are sweating. And your muscles are being pulled, and there's going to be pain afterwards. There's going to be pain during.
And all the rehearsal, like leading up to that, to get like strong enough to do it.
Somebody posted a thing on Facebook. I loved it. It was. Was it hot?
no, I didn't grab it.
Oh.
I didn't grab
It was a shot like from profile, and you can see the water line, and you see this tip of this iceberg, very small, and then beneath it is the rest of the iceberg, extremely huge, and it said like practice, perform, you know, the rehearsal and performance.
So true.
Yeah. I think a good way also to look at I think a good way to look at the difference between work before fall and then toil afterwards Work before fall was made you one with the divine. You were one with the presence of God. Now, since you're fallen, your work, it's the same act, but now it's toil because you don't feel the fulfillment of oneness with God. And that's why He had to send His Son, so now you can work in Him and be one with the divine. But now,
saying that applies to all people who work. Are you saying, like you said, after the fall, you said people doesn't make them feel good to work?
well, it doesn't. No, it may. No, you can definitely feel good to work, but it's not the fulfillment. It's not giving you oneness with God. It's not bringing you in His presence. Because, like in the garden, God's walking with them. He's naming the Adam's working they're taking care of the garden. He's naming the animals.
So if a person says he has fulfillment from whatever he's doing, it's never going to be what you're talking about.
Oh, well, they can find fulfillment from the work, but it's not. But then
not
the
with
work
God.
is over. It's just like you can find fulfillment from dancing, but then you stop dancing and you got to go immediately back to it. So it's holistic in that sense. Of which, hey, beautiful, you want to? How are you doing?
I just want
That's
to
not a
say
cake.
hi.
Chicken.
Oh, you're gonna head out. I'll walk you back.
Oh, you tried to answer
Yeah, no, I'll walk you back.
that.
So it gets in. So too, that gets into the difference between the Ecclesiastes vanity of vanities. It's all vanities. I mean, there it lists out wisdom, work, all the good stuff, and it's just vapor. You know, it's just a breath of air. Is a breath of air. It's vanity is vanity. It all just kind of, no matter what we do, any work that we do without God, we're in the finite. We can't get to God's presence. So that would be the difference between
Well,
work.
if you define it like that, yeah, we can't be infinite, obviously.
Yeah.
Because we're not.
Right, that's right. And
for
the
yourself.
problem too with the, I think a lot of the American Christian mindset can be that you can't have fun in work until after the second coming, or you can't really have fun until that happens. It's not now. Two, I think there can be a bit of an unfortunate understanding of conversion. Because conversion, if you accept Jesus as your Lord and Christ, that is your conversion, but you're actually your entire life growing and developing in conversion. Because it's a kind of conversion from the old mindset of the dichotomy between work and play to work/play, where they're two sides of the same, they're synthesized. So you're always growing and learning, and that gets into the importance of knowledge, the importance of wisdom, like we're doing now. But if you think conversion is a one-step thing and there's no sanctification afterwards, it's going to get to the point in the church where there's this split between pleasure and work, play, etc., and no growth out of it, because we don't really have a place for continual conversion per se or sanctification. I'll be right back. Need help?
Sorry, friends. It's lovely to see you all. I'll be off, and I'll be back tomorrow. Good to see you all. Blessings.
What was the question you were asking?
I don't know.
Work.
It's probably something
Like the
about
eternal
Jesus.
value of work, and if you can find work fulfilling with it.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, because that's what he was saying in the book as far as like the 5 circles of art. It's like, sure, you can be an atheist who talks about peace and compassion, but there's a difference between that kind of as a universal concept and knowing it distinctly in the Christian meaning of peace and compassion. So he was saying everybody can have fulfillment or sort of
It's very Deus Ex Machina kind of thing, where you just like, it only works in your system, so it's like you can't understand unless you're in the system.
No, he's saying that everybody can talk about and experience these things, but you won't experience it in its fullness.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But it's not off limits to you altogether.
No, I only get 3/5. I only get 3/5, man. Is that what's up?
Exactly, yeah.
I'm glad you got it. Okay, maybe I don't know.
But yeah, so I started thinking about a lot of other things while we're talking. One is, I think because, like we're saying, we're finite, it can be hard for us to think about how work and play are simultaneous, whereas God is now eternal, so he gets everything all at once. So we can only experience, the woman goes through 9 months of pregnancy, and then an extreme amount of pain when she's birthing, but then immediately as that baby is birthed, it's like, oh, joy. You know, all of that gets like swallowed up in that moment. Or I always use the example of, like, when I'm making films and I gotta get up early in the morning, I gotta get to the set and I gotta get the actors together and I gotta know what shots to do and I gotta know where they're supposed to be and I gotta get all these different angles and then I gotta edit it and I gotta stay up 12 nights in a row till midnight, and then when I finally screen it, it's like, oh, and everybody loves it. And then even the bad parts, like the outtakes, now, even though I hated that, and then waking up early in the morning, now even the outtakes like become a part of the process and become a part of making it like, oh, that's so hilarious, that's great. It's like, but in the moment it was not funny.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, it's 5 o'clock and you guys aren't on time and I need to be filming and we only have this room for 2 hours and I got a lot of shots to get. But it becomes a joke later. So I think because we can't experience everything all at once, we see work as this really, really hard thing to deal with. But we all have experienced those moments where we had a moment of like completion, where we felt the kind of enraptured moment, you know, when all of that other stuff no longer matters. But I think for God, you know, think about Jesus, you know, going on the cross. I always bring up the point of, we use the word passion, which actually means to suffer, but we don't really think about the word passion as having a negative connotation. It's like, I'm really passionate about that. So we're really saying, it's like, I really like to suffer about that. You know, so like I said, the woman giving birth, she doesn't see it as a burden because she wants this child. It sucks at the moment, but when she finally gives the child, it's like, oh wow, that was completely worth it. It was totally worth it. So I think that's also a reason why pleasure and play have to be a part of the equation, because those are the things that kind of dull you to be able to endure the pain. You know, as Jesus, because the joy, again, that word joy, set before him, he was able to endure the cross. It wasn't like he was able to endure because I had to do this. He's like, no, I'm getting a reward from this. There's going to be something coming out of this. Yeah, he had to have a sense of pleasure to be able to, I mean, if you have no sense of joy or pleasure, you can't get through anything. And it goes back to the joy of the Lord is our strength. If you don't have an end result, an end goal of joy, then it's really meaningless.
Yeah, but there are plenty of artists who don't have that though. It's the tortured artist thing. They don't get to have that joy, but they still make shit. Are they meaningless to you, Bernard?
I'm not saying they're meaningless, but I'm saying their experience is meaningless. I mean, think about it. I say, Evan, I want you to don't even bring joy into this equation. It's like, Evan, I'm making this movie, right? It's gonna be 2 hours long. I want you to score it. I'm gonna need an epic score for it, and I want you to go. You got like a year to do it because it's gonna take me at least 2 years to make the movie. So you stay up like till 2 a.m. almost every night for a year, just like perfecting this score. And I'm sending you back edits, like, yeah, I like that, but change this note. And you're like, okay. And so then comes time for me to use a score, and I'm like, Evan, actually, I went with this other guy.
Well, I mean, obviously it'd be annoying, but I still made a bunch of music, and that's the whole end of this.
But yeah, because you enjoyed it, you were able to
Well, probably even if I didn't enjoy it though, I mean, I still have it though.
But yeah, but you're happy that you have it. The whole point is that you took pleasure in the fact that either you did it or you took pleasure in the fact that you have something in the end. But if you didn't enjoy the process or the product, it would be a sucky experience, right?
I mean, you can appreciate it existing without being happy. But yeah, if you have some sense,
Well, yeah, I mean, that just happened to me recently. Somebody asked me to do something. I spent a month on it, and then they're like, oh yeah, we don't need it. So if I had,
I'm not going to mix Sudas the song because
that has nothing to do with
it's just a fleeting.
But I could have been very upset that they had done that. But the fact that I got something really good out of it and I enjoyed the process, I was like, okay, that upset me, but I got this and it's really good. And I enjoyed staying. I did it because I wanted to do it. So the only way I could endure the late nights is because I thoroughly wanted to do it. The other two things I wanted to talk about was
Wait, before you change the subject,
It's all the same.
that just brings back to recognizing that we really do have a choice about what we emphasize and what we think about related to any kind of work or project we're doing.
Right. Daniel Pink. Everybody should read Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. So he takes the Tom Sawyer scene where Tom Sawyer's grandmother or aunt, whatever, says, I need you to paint the fence. And he's like, well, this is not going to be fun. So his friend comes by and he's like, you got to paint the fence. And then Tom flips it on him and he says, I don't know what you're talking about. This is the greatest thing I've ever done in my life. And the guy's like, what are you talking about? He's like, I love painting this fence. And so then his friend's like, well, let me paint the fence. And he's like, nah, man, get away. I'm painting the fence. Get out of here. And he's like, come on, man, please. And then Tom's like, okay, well, you got to give me your apple. Then I'll let you paint the fence. So the next thing you know, he's got all the boys up the street, like, painting and doing his work. Because he's tricked them into thinking that this work is now play. Yeah, I just got a couple more, then I'll throw you the bear. So that whole chapter is talking about turning work into play. He talks about in the chapter how there are men who get up on Saturday and they will pay. They like drive these horse carriages or something. So they wake up on Saturday morning early and pay to do that. Whereas you could give them something else where they would get paid and they actually wouldn't enjoy it as much. So he makes the point is, like, there are things that we actually pay for, and that shows the reason we're doing them is because they're bringing us enjoyment. He says, don't look at how much people get paid, look at what they spend their money on, and you'll get a kind of a picture into what they are passionate about.
Yeah.
And the last thing was, what was the last thing? I'll think about it.
Wow, thanks.
Good point.
So I just had a very recent experience of this, where the same task under different circumstances is fun versus a chore, where I took out my tent to get all of the parts to my tent ready for a camping trip, and that felt like a chore. But then when I was at the camping trip, it was like, oh, not only do I know how to set up this tent, but I get to show off to myself how good I am with ropes and how I understand how to put up a tent properly. That's all. It's a lot about showing off, either to myself or to somebody else.
You want to speak? I mean, to that, I think it's important that we, what does it mean when we say we have fun doing something? Like, I don't think when you were working on the project, you were giddily, you were laughing and things,
right.
Like you were doing it. Likewise, you can have fun doing, photography, but it's, you're very aware and things like that. There's a way in which to have fun is to just do it versus I'm doing it. Like, there's a loss of self-awareness. Any act of which the self is lost is quote-unquote fun. You're joyful. You lose consciousness of yourself. You're lost in the activity. And then you find it fun because you like that feeling and the experience of losing yourself. That's almost, in a way, dying to yourself, to use Christian theology, Christian terms. While the works that I have enjoyed, if I think back on my what I do is when I'm really aware of, I don't want to do this. Like, the I comes in. It's like I'm doing photography versus photography, the act of photography, right? Or versus when I have to write a paper for the class. It's like, I have to write a paper and I don't like it versus I just wake up and do it. The consciousness of the I kind of fades away. And there's something about that loss of self-awareness that helps us understand what exactly we mean when we say have fun doing it. It's that bursting through of joy now that the barrier of the self has started to fade away and you're letting it drop through. And that too gets into where we see at the very core of the human is light or joy per se, that if we just open the window blinds, then it naturally bursts through. I mean, that's from my own experience. I do, like, when I think, oh, now I have to write another chapter, now I have to write another page, then it becomes very toilsome.
Well, I mean that's where the crux of the issue is, that it's all mind over matter. Like, there was a time where I interned at a music studio, and like, it's no fun. It didn't really make me want to work on my music anymore. But after that, I started working on it again myself, and it was like awesome because it's just me doing it.
Yeah, there's a way in which when you're in that environment, you know people are looking at you as a musician, so you think of yourself as a musician who has to perform versus just being Evan, just doing it.
You're a target of your own judgment.
Yeah.
And other people's judgment, and you have a form that's solid temporarily anyway.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Versus just kind of going.
You're not part of the group or the environment. You're a separate entity.
That's right. Oh yeah, if I'm walking in the woods alone, I don't think of myself as Daniel is walking in the woods. You're just walking in the woods. But if other people are present, you become aware that you're walking in the woods, and you think of it within those terms.
Or you think, we together as a group are working in the woods, and here's Daniel, and here's Rachel, and here's Evan, and here's Bernard,
like
and we're walking together. We're walking, and it's the four of them walking together: Dorothy and the Tin Man and the other guys.
But who am I?
But but none of us are an individual. It's the group, the four, together walk.
The whole. That's exactly. That's the proper the body of Christ would be that experience. That's how the body's supposed to function, as this whole that has no barriers between self. In flow, play, creativity by that psychologist whose name's impossible to say, and Viktor Frankl, they all talk about pivotal to the creative process is a loss of self, a loss of thinking about self. And I think that's kind of really what it means to have fun, is when you lose consciousness of yourself and you just are. And I think a good way to think of Eden is a place where people just are.
Like, what does that say about existence, though, that you're happiest when you're completely lost from everything around you? And that's, I agree, that's how I feel too. It's why, like, I love playing in the amphitheater, because then it's like I become just like a mood, and I'm not just a single person anymore. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I play here at open mic, it's like you got all the people right in front of me, and it's like, oh, it's like all eyes pointing to me, and I am this performer.
Like each person's holding a pitchfork.
That's what it kind of feels like sometimes. Like, this isn't my favorite place to play, but no, only because the people are so close. Right. Like, it's not like anything about the
as venue. In emotionally, or
no, just
as
just
friends.
Physically.
I understand.
It's like strange. It's like that.
Well, I think
this is the mind over matter. You got to imagine you're some other place.
I mean, I don't really think much when I'm playing anyway, but it's just like a subconscious thing.
Well, I think that what you're getting at is one of what Nietzsche defines the difference between good nihilism and bad nihilism. Unfortunately, there's been taking this idea that we're getting at and directing it toward nihilism, versus in Christianity there actually is a kind of nihilism at its very core, that the world is fallen, that it's nothing without Christ. Modern existentialism has an A equals A, nothing, we're nothing. But in Christianity you have this, we're nothing without Christ. In Christianity, it's believed when you finally die to yourself and die to the world, then it opens up to letting Christ, like a ray of light through a window that the blinds have been opened, shoot through. Versus the nihilistic that says it's just a closed window and there's nothing we can do, it's just closed. So A is A versus A is A without B. But since everyone is made in the image of God, everyone can have those same experiences of a loss of self-awareness and feel what it's getting at when we're talking about A equals A without B. A Nietzsche is made in the image of God, whether he likes it or not. Atheists, whether they like it or not, are made by God, and Christ died for them. So then you can have those experiences universally.
But still, if having the ideal is to not be aware of yourself and to just exist, doesn't that mean that your awareness and existence can be bad?
It's interesting because when we use a word like existence, we're no longer talking about existence because we're using the word existence. We're conscious of existence. So it's very hard to even, in the very point you just made, which is just the nature of language. If I say cat, I'm now separate from the entity.
Let's ignore the
cat.
semantics. let's get rid of that.
Well, I think it's important to note, because if you forget that, then your consciousness of the question then becomes lost in the...
That's so meta.
No, but that's important, because you get lost. You actually start Wittgenstein. So much of his work was identifying that most philosophical projects were actually linguistical errors. Like a lot of metaphysics, honestly, a lot of ontology makes the mistake. All of Descartes comes from his greatest mistake was saying, I think, therefore I am, failing to recognize that if you think, you are. It's not thinking causes I amness. No, I amness is thinkingness, and thinking is I am. They're synthesized. You can't have an and.
Well, you could say, therefore, it proves that I am. Maybe that, that's the way I think, therefore, is the 3 dots.
Well, it's like, I think, therefore I am. So, like, you can't separate I think and being. Like, you can't say therefore. They're one and the same. It would be like, I think in parentheses / I am in parentheses.
But it's just it's not necessarily a causal relationship.
Well, that's the problem.
All of
that's what you're getting at is right. But the problem is Descartes, in his metaphysics, has a causal relationship. That's why.
If he said that explicitly, then of course.
That's why Cartesianism falls apart. But then Sartre, in Being and Nothingness, going in the direction that we're talking about, tried to revitalize, and he did a pretty good job. There actually needs to be a philosopher who synthesizes Heidegger and Sartre. But that's just my opinion.
Just a lot of names.
I'm just throwing out names that sound impressive.
I'm going to say big names.
It sounds really impressive. No, the loss of the self-awareness. To be hitting a baseball without thinking of yourself as hitting a baseball. To be a Christian without thinking of yourself as a Christian. To be so lost in the beauty of God. That's why beauty then gets important, and joy, that you no longer think of yourself as, I believe in Christ. You're just enwrapped in Him, if that makes any sense. When you're experiencing God, you're so enwrapped of Him, there's no conscious moment of thinking, I am experiencing God. It's just experiencing God. It's just God. It's just God. It's just, wow. That's why at the end of the Paradiso, when we have Dante ascending into God's presence, the poem just falls apart. His language collapses, it turns into baby babble, and it says that his wings failed their lofty fantasy. It's rather beautiful as he ascended to the love that moves the sun and stars. And I think this too gets into why theologians talk about God as ineffable. You can't put Him into language. That's not just a lame excuse to believe in God without having to explain Him, because you can't put it in words. No, by definition, God is that of which is pure experience. Hence, you can't talk about Him, you just have to experience Him. And the last thing I was going to say, but Evan just walked away, to go back to what I was saying before I walked to Michelle, is it's very important to understand that toil is linked to we're not able to access the Holy of Holies. It's behind the curtain. No matter what we do, we can't get to the Holy of Holies. We can toil, but now by Christ's blood we can work. And so now our toil actually gives us access to the Holy of Holies. The curtain has been torn down. So, like what you were getting at, all work without God is just finite leading to finite versus finite leading to infinite. Did you want the best?
Just a question then.
Yes, ma'am.
How does toil lead to the Holy of Holies?
By coming to the point where you truly, with every part of your being, recognize that you can't access God. One of the poor, because this gets into good works and belief and all of that unfortunate heresy, stuff that will get you shot. But it's very important that you work as hard as you possibly can, trying to be, say, pleasing to Christ, because that's the only way you'll ever truly believe with every fiber of your being that you actually can't access Christ unless He comes to you. The function of good works is to do them to the point that you truly grasp that you're unable to do them. And that's actually, you see, Martin Luther came to his conclusion that you're saved by faith alone after being the most die-hard Catholic that the world has ever seen, trying to climb the steps on his knees. They called him the monk of monks. He was extraordinary. And that's when he came to truly believe, not only intellectually but experientially, that he couldn't save himself. There's a lot of Christians today who believe they can't save themselves in their head, knowledge-like, but they don't believe it holistically because they haven't gone all in to serve Christ in every walk of their life to see that they're nothing. And when you truly, truly believe that you're nothing, that's when you truly, truly finally grasp that you're nothing without Christ. And that's when the finite leads to the infinite. Not because you access it, but because it breaks through.
Right where I left off.
Right, because it breaks through. So that's what I would say.
Well, the things I was going to say go back to work and play. One, the guy who's...
Oh, real quick. It's very important that you work as hard as you possibly can to truly believe that you can't actually work fully without play. So that too gets those
I
tied
feel like
together.
you cancel yourself out.
No, you missed what we were saying. So go on,
I
Bernard.
think I just woke up.
Oh, wow.
Work and play. Well, one, the guy whose last name is really like 20 letters long, his first name is Mahaley.
Yeah, so Sikia, whatever.
Yeah, he invented the term flow that we use very often. And he has these characteristics of flow. I think it's like 10 of them. But one of them is being in a state where you lose all self-awareness. And it also talks about how your abilities are equal to the task at hand. And there's a sense of timelessness. And then also he talked about how these moments aren't necessarily like relaxed moments. They're actually moments when you're working very hard and like feeling pain.
Clarity, in a sense.
Yeah,
but
that's
it's
the thing.
It's almost like you become glass, just completely translucent.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You just do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you can be, lifting weights, but if it's a moment of flow, the pain is not something that is hindering you from like lifting the weights. It's just part of the experience. But yeah, the other thing, Daniel. Okay, so Daniel Pink. I'm gonna ruin the first part of the book for you, but sorry. Okay, so he's like, okay, it starts off with like these sea otters, and they were having these sea otters go through a hoop to get like a treat or something. So they would hold the treat over, and the sea otters would come through, and they hold it on the other side to see if they come through. And so then they did it. What did they do? They like took it to the next level. I forgot, some other kind of reward, and the sea otters did it. But then they took away the treat, and the sea otters kept like going through the hoop back and forth. And so then the people who did the experiment was like, well, what could be the possible third motivation for them going through the hoop when we took away the treats? And then they thought, well, what if it was just the task itself? Like they did the task because they just wanted to do the task. So then he gets into the whole idea of intrinsic motivation, and as human beings, we want to do things a lot of times because we want to do them. There's no end goal other than we are the end goal. It always loops back to us. So when we were talking about money earlier, okay. So there's this problem done by this. It was done in I think '60s psychologist called the candlebox problem. So you got a box of thumbtacks, a candle, and a matchbook, and the task to the people in the experiment was you have to attach the candle to the wall so that when you light the candle and the wax drips, it doesn't go into the floor. So people tried it for a while, and then some people figured out and some people didn't. But basically, if you take the thumbtacks, dump them out of the box, you can then use the thumbtacks to attach the box to the wall, and then put the candle in the box and then light it. Because everybody else, they tried to like melt it to the wall, or they tried to like, thumbtack it to the wall, but it didn't work. But they did that problem. They said they did it in America, and they did it in other countries where like the economies were, equal, whatever, comparatively equal. And so what they did was, with certain groups, they said, who can ever solve this problem, the quickest is going to get like a $20 reward. So you would think that the people who were promised the reward would complete the task faster, right? But it actually took those people 2.5 minutes longer to complete the task. And the reason he says is because rewards, they're good at focusing us on certain kinds of tasks. If it's a very straightforward linear task, they work because you don't have to think. You're just like, take these boxes from this side of the room over there, whoever does it the quickest gets more money. It's like done. But the fact that the people were so focused on the reward stopped them from seeing that the box could be used as a second thing. So he's saying in those cases where we need to use that part of our brain that can look outside of just the norm of the uses of things, the rewards are actually detrimental,
Right.
because they keep you from doing this and seeing possibilities, because you're thinking, I want $20, so how do I get this to work? So you're no longer thinking about like possibilities, you're thinking about get tasks done. So all that to talk about the intrinsic nature and like we were saying before about there being linear tasks versus tasks that you just do for themselves. The tasks that you usually do for yourselves tend to be more creative because you're not focused. Your goal is to be creative. Your goal is not to like a specific type of creativity, because creativity by definition is all possibilities, it's all range of things. So that was one thing. So related to that, there was a girl who told me this story, and I haven't been able to find it online. I think she said it came on Radio Lab, which is, I guess, it's kind of like online kind of radio blog or something. So she said there was a guy who was at his house, and these kids started coming down in the alley down below his second floor, and they would be banging on trash cans, like high school kids or something, and they did it and kept them up. So he, being a professor of motivation and psychology, rather than doing what we'd all do, like, get out of here, you kids, he thought about it, and he said, he went outside to the kids and was like, oh, hey guys, this is great, thank you for playing, this is really cool, but how about you guys come back tomorrow night and I'll pay you guys like $20 to do this? And they're like, okay, great. So they left and they came back, and they're playing, so he gives them the money and then they go. So the next night he comes and they start playing again, and then he's like, oh man, I forgot, man, I couldn't go to the ATM. Will you guys take 10 tonight? And they were like, okay, all right, well, just this one time. So they take the $10 and they play, and then they leave, and then the next night they come back and he's like, man, guys, I'm sorry, I don't have any money whatsoever. Can I pay? Man, we're not playing anymore. We can not. It's like,
That's fine.
so he was so that I love that story though. But the fact that he then applied their motivation to money, and then he took away the money, and it's like they were doing it just because they were doing it, they were trying to annoy him. But then the fact that he was able to insert that motivation and then completely direct how they saw the task, I think is really interesting to what it says about how our nature is.
It's a statement. Well, yeah, it's a statement on human nature, where it's like if you get something, you just want more. I know that's not exactly the point of the story, but it's unfortunate. So it's like you're always unsatisfied, never have enough.
Right.
And to that, before the 20th century, this separation between work and the goal didn't exist. You worked to make a house so that you made a house. You didn't work to make money to buy a house. Money has kind of thrown off the closed loop of saying you work for the good of the task in itself.
Right.
And if you're writing a book, the reason you do it, your goal is to write the book. But notice it's a contained loop. There's a difference between working at a factory to make money to go outside of the factory, to do something outside of it, versus in the factory there. So the difference here is between a task goal system that's a closed loop versus a task goal that's not closed.
It's the difference between a person who has a job they like and a job they don't, pretty much.
Yeah, one could look at that. But I think, too, the one who likes a job, they're still paid for it. I'm kind of talking about the socioeconomic change today. I mean, yeah, you can have a closed-loop experience if you like your job, and then that extra, it's like icing on top. It's like, great, now I have money, so I can work longer, because I can build another, so I can, have the money to do another novel. So you're right. I think the system we have with money is very good for a manufacturing industrial society. But when it comes to today, where you have to invent and to create because you have a population size that now there's not enough jobs to give to them, so you need people to create jobs, it's very damaging. It's not very good, because it does it focuses you rather than makes you think holistically. 2, education systems, you major in English, you have nothing to do with engineering, or vice versa. That makes you focus on literature. You don't think of its relation to something bigger. This whole book here is so interesting on art and physics, on how artists would create particular visions or paintings, and that would inspire scientists to think new ways about space and time. Say Muncie, where it's not a still image with the fruit basket. That makes you think of how time is it's not solid. There's actually atoms moving behind that. Art has there's that whole book by the guy who wrote Imagine, who's I guess doesn't have much of a career now.
Jonah Laird.
Yeah, Proust was a neuroscience. That goes into say how George Stein, the woman who wrote those kind of strange books with
It's
language.
a different Imagine.
You're like,
Different. Yeah, George Stein, different, totally different. But in that book, he talks about how Stein kind of is the forerunner to Chomsky, how Proust is the forerunner to a lot of the neuroscience today, how art actually gives direction to science, and vice versa. They tend to inform one
I should
another.
end with my poem.
Yeah, you should. That would be
I'll end
nice.
with my poem.
So the economic structure and focusing us on being, say, PhD students in English, or PhD, like focusing us to be experts, has actually robbed us of the ability to create new substances of which we can be experts at. So the center cannot hold, things fall apart. The falcon cannot hear the falconer. The beast slouches toward Bethlehem.
And then the rabbi cannot flow his shofar.
I'm not getting any of these references.
That's all Yates, it's poetry.
Cannot tell his jokes.
Take it back.
The last few things I'll say, and if anybody has anything else, they can say it, but I'm going to end it with the poem. One, I forgot some of them. One, you're talking about, oh yeah, same book. So in that book Imagine by Jonah Laird, he talks about how Pixar created this culture where the like animators or the storytellers and the artists would push the limits of what the technology could do. So then when the people who had to like animate this stuff, they're like, oh, they couldn't be done. But then they saw after they toyed with it a while, it's like, okay, maybe it could be done. Thanks for pushing us. And then like the technology on one hand kind of forced the creators to stay within a limit. So they were constantly like challenging one another by their different crafts, which, you know, going back to that body of Christ thing, we need the left brain and the right brain, we need the structure, we need the chaos, we need it all working in perfect unison. Work and play, what else I was talking about? Work and play. Oh, there's one I forgot, but I remember the other two. One being, because you were saying like somebody could work at a job and they not like their job. But I think we have to think about the big picture in that, for instance, 2 years ago, I worked for the Census Bureau for the summer. Not my job description by any means. Going out, knocking on people's doors, engaging strangers, taking down data that is very routine and structured. What?
Never mind.
By no means is that any way fit into my idea of what a job should be. But I didn't have any money at the moment. I had like, I don't remember how much I had. I just said, oh, I better find some other job because I'm not getting any video gigs right now. So
Say video games.
I had to tell myself, if I like making music and writing poetry and doing all this other fun stuff, I guess I better be alive to do it. So I was able to use that as a stepping stone. But that's the problem that many people have, is they don't see it as a stepping stone.
Right,
they see it as a complete stone walkway to the end of their life. No. I used that particular moment to get me back to where I wanted to be. So yeah, you may have to sometimes do a job or task that aren't in the moment pleasurable. Like I was saying about the woman having the baby. It's not fun when you're having the baby. I mean, I've never had a baby, but it does not look fun from what I see.
They give you a lot of painkillers, so like, it can be fun.
Perhaps. I'll let you go tell
We'll
that
get
to-
you pregnant and find out.
I'll pass on.
But yeah, you have to start we have to look at, I mean, like, yeah, Jesus, when he was being crucified on the cross, I'm not sure he was like all giggles. He was like, he said, God, if this cup can pass, can it pass? And he was like, but not my will, your will. So he went through the pain. So yeah, there was moments of true, intense, hard work. But his eye was on the entire picture. So yeah, when we talk about work and play, the two can work together. And you have to think about the scope of life that you're looking at. But yeah, my problem is when people get on that whole like, well, we gotta do what we gotta do. Sometimes you have to do a job you don't like. Yeah, keyword being sometimes.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes. Not your entire life.
Not Obama's America, man.
Or because of that. The last thing I'll say, unless I remember the other one, and then I'll do the poem. Oh, you made me think of one of my favorite little stories. I got to memorize the story better, but you'll get the gist. So, businessman is on vacation. He's at an island. He is seeing this guy who's in a canoe, and the guy is fishing. The businessman is intrigued, goes over after the guy comes in from fishing, strikes up a conversation, just gets to talk to him, says, oh, so what do you do around here? He's like, oh, nothing. I just come out here and fish. I catch enough fish for my family so we can eat food. And sometimes I catch a little extra and I sell, or trade to get other things that I need in the village. But it's great because I get to come out here and fish. I get to spend time with my boy, and it's perfect. And then the business guy says, have you ever thought about, catching more fish so you could sell them and get a second boat so that way you could have two fishermen? And so then the native guy's like, why would I want to do that? He's like, well, if you got two boats, then you get twice as many fish. And then you could sell all those fish and take the profits from that and buy a whole fleet of boats. And so he's like, why would I want to do that? It's like, well, then if you get a whole fleet of boats, all of those boats can catch more fish, and then you could sell all those fish, and then you can make millions. And then you can take those millions, and you can start a company, and you could go to New York, where you sell the company and go public, and then you have people who buy stock options, and then you'll be a millionaire. And the guy was like, why would I want to do that? He said, well, because then after you become a millionaire, you can retire, and you can move to an island, and you can spend the day fishing and spend time with your son. And the guy's like, what I'm doing right now. So it's just, that is the place we live in, where people want us to create this middleman to happiness, is what I call it. Do all of this stuff so you can do what you're already doing. Oh, you want to be creative? Well, you got to get a sucky job to be creative. It's like, no, I could just live in the apartment that I live in now, live within my means, and just be creative. Like me, I'm a single person. I don't have a wife. I don't have any kids. I don't have anybody to take care of. Why do I need a 4-bedroom house and 2 cars and to go into debt? I don't. I'm fine with living in my apartment. I mean, it's big enough for me. I have enough food. I'm not dead.
Yeah, but what if you get a woman and she expects these things?
Well,
as most tend to do.
She better have a job too, then.
You get a sugar mama. That's what I want.
Or that.
Sugar mama.
But you have to also find a like-minded partner who's going to be like, well, that's the other thing. I mean, that's a whole other conversation we're not going to get to. That's the other problem, is that people are sold this American dream versus like following their own personal dreams. So then, you meet somebody and they start talking. Like, I feel like if you meet somebody, the two of you need to sit down and be like, what do we want out of life? Where do we want to go and what do we want to do? Do we want to live in a nice house? If that's the case, then we need to reevaluate and figure out what our jobs are going to be. But if you meet a girl who's like, if we get married, I'm fine with living in this 1-bedroom apartment because I just want to paint and you just want to write poetry, then do that. And then you don't have to like pay this absorbent amount of rent for a big house that you're not even using most of the time. So yeah, I think people just have to come down to making decisions about what they want to do and choosing it and living it out versus living in this American dream so other people can be impressed. Because that's all it comes down to. You guys may have heard the quote where it's what? Spending money you don't have to buy things you don't really want to impress people who don't care. Like that's
on Facebook.
Yeah, on Facebook. I mean, that's what people do nowadays. They're trying to impress other people by what they've done, and so then they have to work a job to maintain that lifestyle. but that job is not really what they want to do, and then they get home and they're too tired to actually do what they want to do, and then they complain about, I wish I could just retire, I wish I could just paint more. It's like, you can.
I think there was just an Onion article about that.
What did it say?
It was just like that. It's like, oh, you have to work your whole life to be able to do what you want for like a couple hours a day, but you're too tired to do that, so it's like...
Right.
Well, I think too, what a problem can be if you say, I need to get the money because I may need it.
Right.
That is deadly. You should definitely look into how much would healthcare cost, how much would car insurance. And this is what I'll say: the cost of living is higher than you think, but it is not higher than you fear. And if you start engaging in an entire mode of life to make a lot of money so you can pay for the cost of living in case it goes up, what will kind of start happening is you'll gradually put into your life costs that are unnecessary but that you think are necessary, and suddenly you've kind of created this prophecy for yourself where you start living at a level of expense that does need a higher amount of money and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens if you move to DC or to New York.
Exactly
it's like
right.
You make more money, but it costs a lot more to live there, and then you just
That's
get sucked
exactly
in
right. If you want to get an apartment in New York, I mean, it can be up to $4,000. I mean, DC, it can be up to $4,000. I mean, $4,000 a month.
Well,
That's a
I
little
mean,
silly,
okay, if
right?
you're living at like a really nice...
No, I mean, if you're living in
Probably
it's
nice.
more of a prime area. If you're living on like
Okay,
Wall
prime
Street,
area,
if you're living in stuff, and of course, some of these you can get, say, 3 people in there with you, but the apartment is not made for 3
You get a
people.
car for $4,000.
I mean, it's like stuff
a
like
month
that.
of rent? Are you kidding me?
Now, the other
Not a
thing
Ferrari,
too
bro.
that
Get a
will
Ferrari.
happen is, okay, you're making, say, $150,000, but with taxes you're making 75, say, thousand, and then it just keeps to go down from there. And so you just got to, I think too, what you really need to do is to actually just very seriously think about what do you want to buy, what kind of, where do you want to live, and to have a real sense of that, because that will help you not one day wake up panicking, going, oh shoot, I'm going to get married, and I'm going to need all this money. So that is all. It costs more than you think, but it does not cost more than you fear.
Yeah, the last point on that is, people confuse comfortable with living. It's like, oh, the cost of living is so high, but they're including iPhone, an iPhone monthly bill and cable.
Well, you don't have a smartphone either, right?
I mean, I do.
It's not a smartphone.
What is it? How smart does it have to be?
It has to get a 1600 on its
It's a phone that has
SAT.
a data plan.
It has GPS and texting, and it has apps.
That's pretty smart. It can tell you where you're at.
How much more smart do I have to be?
Well, I don't have a smartphone.
You work
so I guess
appliances.
you have a smarter phone than me.
I guess so. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff included in that, which is just like your leisure, and I think that could be offset if you were just doing your leisure of what you wanted to do. If you were really expressing your own creativity, you wouldn't be trying. I think that's what happened. People, they don't express their creativity in natural ways, and then it just comes out in this other way. It's like, oh, I can't paint and draw and I can't dance. I never started that coffee shop that I wanted, so at least I can have all these cool toys and gadgets and like other things that people think are cool, and it makes me feel like you're creating a life. You're creating your living room. Look, I got that. It's like you're drawing or painting. I made that. I made that DVR. I made that. I made that.
It's the whole consumer culture. It's like you take pride in the shit you buy, which is ridiculous because you didn't make it.
But in a way, it's like a false.
You achieved it.
It's a false way of making. It's like you're
achievement unlocked. Like you have a couch. Like I mean,
it's like you're making it in so much that you're making your life. Like you're creating your experience. When people come over, they can be like, oh man, you got that new HD 71-inch TV? Yeah, that's cool. It's like they are impressed by the thing you've made, or even the terms we use. Oh, you made it.
You're making it.
Oh,
Yeah, that's right. I think those are the terms we use for buying that stuff. Is you make it.
Yeah.
You've made it. I think that too just is a counterfeit of the wanting to hear God say, "Well done, good and faithful." You made it. You did it. We crossed the finish line. It's like, yeah, I did it. I got the house. I made it. I made it.
I mean, that works for some people. That fills the void. And other people turn to religion. Other people turn to creating things. It's all. I mean, if it works, it works.
But I think the problem is with using that to fill the void is like it's never enough. Like because you can get more T. Like there's always going to be another iPhone, another T. There's never going to be another you.
I mean,
you're never going to have
the
that
pursuit becomes. But that's like.
But
that is your life.
I mean, I don't know. You know, I've been dealing with that, thinking about that question. Are there really genuinely people who that's all they need?
I think so.
I think, but to that, I think extreme jumps in depression, where we have we even give terms like empty nest syndrome, where once the kids leave, then it's you're upset, or where people get to the top. It's very interesting that the rates of depression and like suicide are very high for people who are very high up the corporate ladder, but down the ladder it's very low. You would think people who are poor would have more issues with depression and suicide. It's the exact opposite. It's
I think there's just increased cases across the board. I think that might have more to do with technology.
That might. I'm not sure. It could have something to do with the television. I think too with consumer culture also comes entertainment culture, where there's a book that's really interesting that I haven't read, but I've read excerpts out of Yancey, I think his name, Entertained to Death, Amusing Ourselves to Death. So I think there are people who, if you were to ask him, are you fulfilled in a moment, they would say yes. But the question is in the entire scope of their life.
I don't think anyone is fulfilled in the entire scope of their life.
Well, no, I mean even people.
Perfect. That would be impressive.
No one's perfect, but I think there are people who come out of it, and there are people who don't. And the question is, why?
I mean, I wouldn't say my life is fulfilled to perfection. Yeah, there's days where I'm like, oh, I want this. But I would say if I were to die today, I would be like, I lived a really good life. I feel like I would have died being like, even if I wanted to do more, I would be pretty pleased with how my life has turned out and what I've done. I think, what you're saying about entertainment and making it, I think, okay, for instance, let's say you're a person and you work at a 9-to-5 business job and you don't really enjoy it, but you like what you've created from it, like you've got all this stuff. I still think the problem lies in that there's something about you that you're not fulfilling that God has put in you that makes you still long, for being able to create. Like there's something I can say about writing a poem that only I could do that. Like I look at that piece of paper and it's like, I wrote that. Not the people who made the iPhone, not the people who made my HD TV, not the people who built my car. All these other people made it. But this thing, I did it and no one else. So I'm fulfilled in that sense.
You didn't build that. You didn't build that, bro.
So I think that's what I'm talking about in that I think people can find momentary satisfaction. Yeah, like, oh man, I got the newest iPhone, I got the new HD TV, I got the newest car. So they're creating their life and they feel like they've made something. But it's never going to be as fulfilling. It's like when you know how you spend all night staying up crafting a song. Like,
but that's the thing. I was going to say is that even as an artist, like I'll make a song, but that's temporary. It only fulfills me for like a little bit.
But it's still something that only you can do. Like you get that fulfillment that only you and you can do that for you. No one else can make a song.
But it's still temporary.
But
well, to that, I mean, that goes back to what we were saying earlier between the difference between toil and work. I mean, when I finish the work, there's fulfillment, but then when I'm done, I still have the fulfillment. I've left that time of having to go to particular finite experiences to a holistic fulfillment, where now I do the art, not because it quote-unquote fulfills me, I'm fulfilled no matter what, but because I want to. From the place of fulfillment, I want to do that. And also you have terminology like you feel called to do it. You feel like that's your purpose. Right. Like that's what Christ is calling you to do. So I mean that kind of gets into too what we were pointing at earlier with the distinction between toil and work that we were getting at.
And also, I'm going to the point that no one else can do that for you but you. And that's why I think a lot of people are unfulfilled. Because there's a certain...
I guess that particular fulfillment, another person couldn't do it.
Right.
It's a personal thing.
Yeah, and so that to me is I feel like people are trying to fulfill that with other things. They're like, once I get this iPhone, then I'll be happy. But it doesn't fulfill that unique thing that only they can give themselves. So they keep doing it over and over. Okay, when I get the next upgrade of the iPhone. Okay, when they come out with the new Android. Okay, when they get the new. Okay, when I get this new. It's always a okay. And they haven't satisfied that self thing within themselves.
I mean, that's. Oh, it was lovely to see you. You have a wonderful day. Lovely evening, sleep. May the road rise to meet you. Stars shine upon you. I mean, that's kind of the difference, like we were just saying, doing from fulfillment versus doing to be fulfilled.
Right.
And from fulfillment, there's more of this sense of you're not of a loss of self-awareness. That's important.
Yeah, and I think the last thing is, even though we've been saying last thing for 5 minutes,
20 minutes. Yeah, 30. We joke when we say these classes are, 6 to 8.
Yeah. Fear of cost of living is related to play because people fear that if I don't reach the cost of living, how can I then play?
We forget that Christ paid that cost.
Yeah. How is there time to play and take joy and pleasure in what I do if I have to attain this certain level of cost of living? And those things are self-imposed. It's like, oh, well, I got to pay rent. But the question is, again...
Hey, Ben.
The question then again is the quality of life that you can be content with versus what you think other people are perceiving you as. If you're like, I can live in this apartment that costs $300 a month. Okay, it's $300 I gotta make. I gotta pay a card note. Okay, I gotta pay that. Yeah, I want a phone. Okay, I want cable. Okay, I want this much entertainment in my life. Okay, so yeah, you add all those things up, and you have just created your own budget.
Yeah.
So now you have to then say, well, what kind of job is going to fulfill that budget? So then you then decide, well, how much time do I have to play and do the things that I want to do? To me, it's why it's most important that your job be inclusive of play. That the job that you're taking is play, so you're not like, oh, I'm so exhausted. Now I want to do this thing. Oh, but I'm so tired. All right, back to sleep, wake up and do it all over. Like, you better find play somewhere, or it's going to come out in a negative way, which is what happens on Friday and Saturday nights, because everybody's just like, I didn't get to do anything I wanted this week because I spent 80 hours doing something I didn't want. So I better get it all in tonight, and I'm going to do a lot of crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
Drinking's crazy.
I mean, to that, you could do a great play on words where you say, don't fear the cost of living because Christ paid the cost for you to live. Yeah, that'd be nice. That's nice. 2, someone who loves what they do ends up putting like 200 hours a week in their work. This is what's kind of the great irony of making this split between work and play in order to get people to work harder. Actually, when you do it, people are less productive. They do less work. They do it less efficiently, less innovatively, less capably. And that's just kind of the irony that kind of echoes Ecclesiastes. Anyway.
Alright, I'll finish it off with the poem, which deals with...
There once was a man named Bernard.
Bernard,
he loosened you from your snare.
This poem...
You might die.
This poem was, if you ever watched the Cosby Show, spin-off show called A Different World, there's episode... Kimberly Reese, type A personality, pre-med, was dating Matthew, actor, and so he was doing a popcorn exercise for his acting class, and she got really annoyed. She was like, you don't take anything serious. He said, I take what I do very seriously. I don't think you respect what I do. And then she says, well, maybe I don't. I'm pre-med, I'm going to be a doctor. We save people's lives. He said, oh yeah, Kim Reese, you're saving people's lives? Well, what exactly are you saving their lives for? So, this poem was inspired by that, and this is called The Right Brain Surgeon. I'm not a doctor, but I do play one on TV. The reverse isn't true. There's very few doctors who want to be me. I'm very aware that I hear lots of scoffers, but what I do on the stage is just as important as what you do in the doctor's office. I know you're doubtful that the same motions I make with my paintbrush are equal to the ones you make with your scalpel. It's evident in the way a girl's mom reacts when she brings me to her household. She greets me, lets me in, but then when she finds out I'm a thespian, she's praying that me and her daughter will just be friends. Conversation silent, like she just came out as a lesbian. Even though I make her daughter happy, bring her flowers and trees, the only way she'll be proud of me is if I earn clout with a degree, and instead of a degree in humor, graduated summa cum laude. I explained to her, I do have a grad degree, but it's an insult to her. She gets mad at me because our culture is only concerned with academic academies. But then they turn around and joke and say, I'm not a doctor, but I do act on TV. Same night, mom and daughter watching Grey's Anatomy because our brain is atrophied without creativity to stimulate the gray matter, and a world without color is gray and doesn't matter to me. Because think about it, human beings use humor, comedy, to make sense of life's tragedies. You know the proverb, the best medicine is laughter and glee. Doctors don't come home from the day's surgery and rewind the tapes. Even they find ways to escape, to recline and take a break, to not have to think, to have a drink from the vines of grape with friends to wine taste. Doctor, you may be the reason for keeping people alive, but I'm the reason they have a life. Tonight, I'm the reason you romance your wife by candlelight. But you just see a struggling artist. You just see a waiter. But I'm the lead player in the theater that she wants you to take her to see later. I'm not saying I'm more important than you are. I'm not saying I'm above you. I'm just saying tonight, without music, what would you and your wife make love to? I'm not a doctor. I just play one on TV. Think about nothing but 100 channels of news and weather the next time you think you don't need me. Just as much as we need another medical brain making theoretical claims, we need another ballet dancer that's classically and professionally trained. So I'm here to challenge the notion that only logic is valid and reason champions talents and emotion. I just want to gain arts some respect. Cartoonists and architects, just because they use paintbrushes in schools as tools and not scalpels in schools, they're perceived as fools without smarts and intellect. Doctors want to cure sleeping disorders. Actors want people to snore and be narcolepts so they can dream more. They want to take your breath away while doctors want to start your breath. An actor is a starving artist who would rather have food for thought and literally starve to death. We both write scripts and both want to make our marks. You with a knife, incision, and heart, and me with a vision and art. We're both filmmakers, making cuts that are precision and sharp, splicing together veins and scenes, holding up the film to the light. It's just the way that you x-ray is a little more left and me more in the realm of the right. Actors can play doctors, but doctors can't play with people's lives at stake. There's no mistakes or second takes and the blood isn't fake. This isn't special effects. People really do bleed. So no, in that moment, it isn't an actor that you need, but see, that's the key. Who illustrates the medical books that you have to read? If I hadn't drawn the pictures in the books that you study, right now, one of your patients could be looking pretty bloody. So I may not put people back together, and I may not take them apart, and I may not have science college degrees and technology that's state of the art, but it's not just a nice thing to have. There's an essential place for our art. Because whether you perform surgery or you perform on stage, you're operating on the heart.
I didn't remember all that.
Thank you, Mr. Hankins. That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you for operating on our hearts.